Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Cole Memo. In this episode, we'll be doing a legislative recap with the Cannabis Equity Illinois Coalition. Once again, you're listening to the Cole Memo. I'm your host, Cole Preston. Every episode is released in audio, video, and transcript format. To find the transcript, audio, or video version of any episode, please refer to the description of the episode that you're listening to now. Within that description, you can find a link which will take you to our website, which will display the transcript for this episode in the platforms where you can find this episode in audio or video formats. If you're unable to locate the episode description on whichever platform you're listening from, simply take note of the episode number and visit thecolememo.com. From there, you can use our search functionality in the top right-hand corner to find the corresponding episode, and then you'll be able to access the audio, video, and transcript version of that episode. You might also find any links that we referenced during the episode so that you might be able to do your own research. If you're not listening to this episode of the Cole Memo on Patreon, then you're listening to this episode later than our patrons. To become a patron, go to thecolememo.com/Patreon. Another way to support our show is at thecolememo.com/support. Our show is funded by listeners like you. One of the best ways to support our show is free. Subscribe to or follow our show. Leave us a positive review from wherever you're listening to us from. Favorite this episode, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, or share it with your best friend. Your engagement and support is appreciated. Today is June 11th, 2024. And I'm sitting down with Doug Kelly and Peter Contos. Doug, why don't you go ahead and remind my listening audience who you are and who you're with?
Hello. First of all, I just want to say thank you, Cole, for giving us the opportunity to be here today and use your platform to continue to spread the word. My name is Douglas Kelly. I'm the Executive Director of Cannabis Equity Illinois Coalition as we continue to fight for equity, justice, and inclusion in the cannabis space. And I'll pass it over to Peter.
Hello, everybody. Peter here with the coalition. I'm our deputy director. I help work on a lot of different policy work as well as grant writing and anything I can do to help support the work of the coalition.
Yep. And folks, I'm displaying the website right now. I'll have it in the podcast description. It's cannabisequityil.org. I just want to say that you should get involved, and it looks like there's a link right in the top right-hand corner to do just that. It's a great way to get involved in all the happenings of the Illinois cannabis community and more. We're starting today after a recent legislative session. I think that's the best way to maybe kick off this conversation. Where do you all want to start today? Does that sound like a good starting point?
Absolutely. Might as well just hop right in and kind of give you guys an update of where things stands right now and the things that should have happened but didn't happen, and kind of give you a little bit of a timeline of what we've seen while we were in Springfield, and just how everything kind of imploded. So yeah, do you want to hop in on the beginning part?
Yeah, I'm happy to take the jump in on this. And so again, our goal is to give everybody the timeline of how this all happened. So it really goes back to, last year, 2023. Doug and myself spent a lot of time in Springfield working to talk about cannabis. Lawmakers really hadn't talked about weed in years, a lot of them. And so, really socializing the issue, talking about why it's still important to follow up and pass, additional legislation. And so really going back, 12 months time, we thought we were able to put together a package of the cannabis omnibus package, which is a piece of legislation with a bunch of different stuff in it, from expanding the medical program, supporting social equity businesses, supporting folks who have criminal records, get into the industry, and a whole lot of other stuff that we don't have time to get into. That bill, unfortunately, was kind of hit the brakes last spring, because of a lot of different issues that we don't have time to get into today. And so that takes us to this year. And so, Doug and myself are back in Springfield the entire session from January to May. And, really in early May is when we saw a lot more, action, because, we really, we were down there, and, Cole has been on our policy meetings, but anybody who's listening and who doesn't join our community policy meetings, we would come into those meetings and we were like, well, I wish I had something to share at all, good, bad, or ugly, but we have nothing. And so we really got into early May, kind of like, well, what's going to happen? And then all of a sudden, Senator Lightford, Leader Lightford, who represents the western suburb of Chicago, she started to convene these stakeholder meetings with, herself, with, the Illinois House of Representatives, as well, including all of their staff members, including groups like the Coalition, including the Cannabis Business Association of Illinois. So a lot of different voices at the table to talk through these issues. And basically all we did, we had 2 or 3 of these meetings, and we just went down the list of what was in the bill from last year that didn't pass. What can we all agree to? What changes need to be made? Technically, we're not going to debate substance right now. There wasn't enough time for that. And so we're all right, we'll take what we can get. And so we had those meetings, and we enter the last week of legislative session, the week before Memorial Day. And while the bill hadn't been advanced at that point, we were told very directly that this, the content of what's in there is good. Folks feel good with what's in there. It's just a matter of when it gets voted on. And
So
that last week is where all goes off the rails. So I'll pass it over to you, Jay.
yeah, so like Peter was saying, so we were there, all of a sudden May kind of hits, and now everybody just scrambling trying to get some stuff done. And we really thought we had put together a very good package. Like everybody had bought in on it. And even the lawmaker was like, we think this should happen. And then it just all went left in a matter of days. We were there until that Friday, right before Memorial Day. And at that point, everything was still good from what we were being told. Like, it seemed to be agreement from everybody this was gonna happen. And then we go to bed, we wake up Saturday morning, and that's when GTI decided they didn't want one of the things that was in the legislation, which was for the medical patients to be able to go to any dispensary to get their medicine and get the tax benefits from it, which was agreed upon in every meeting leading up to that. GTI not once said, we don't support this. You know what I mean? And then for them to hire a bunch of lobbyists that Saturday to block it. And we allowed one organization that would have helped 140,000 medical patients in one fell swoop. And at that point, everything was up in the air. Just everything went off the rails at that point. And we was just in awe. We woke up in shock, like, what all the text messages started coming in, emails, and we reacting at this point. On 2 years worth of hard work, one organization pretty much derailed it for everybody. And this helped the transporters, the medical patients. It was going to give the dispensaries the ability to bring on more investors to help raise money. It was so many good things, the badging thing, all this stuff was in that bill. And it literally collapsed.
If I could add, telemedicine was in there, which would have been really helpful for patients. Curbside, yep. With medical patient priority. I don't know if people realize this, but that is huge right there. That little part. I know that if you go to medical dispensaries across the state, you might get priority, but realize this, folks. I actually just learned that that's not part of the law. This would have made that part of the law, at least with regard to curbside. So that's a big loss.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And even for the patients that's immune deficiency, they wouldn't have had to go into a doctor's office or be around a lot of other people. Right. They could have did it via telehealth. So this really, really hurt the medical patients, not giving them accessibility. For the first 3 years, I was a medical patient. But I got to a point where I was like, it just don't make sense if I still have to drive 50 to 60 miles to get what I want when there's 3 dispensaries within 10 minutes of my house that have what I need, but I just can't utilize it. That's why it's not growing. The medical patient list is not growing. And people are actually dropping out because of the accessibility issues. I don't understand how the state not see some of these things and then just fix the obvious things, which most of the stuff that we had in there was just obvious things that need to be done. It's been on there for 2 years and it went left.
Yeah, some of this stuff would have helped people in the industry as well. It would have streamlined the online application and badging process for prospective workers. It would have increased the craft grow canopy space to 14,000 square feet immediately. It would have allowed for them to do that immediately. Yeah, a lot of good stuff in here.
And again, there's a lot of stuff in there that we could talk for hours and days about. One of the last thing I'll name that's in the bill I think is really interesting is the testing, the second to last item on there, which is the registration of new testing labs. For folks who are been following this very closely, one thing that's continued to be an issue is the lack of testing capacity in the state. There's a small handful of companies who offer lab testing for growers and processors. And we know there's no diversity in those labs. And so the other thing this bill would have done is allow people who have the qualifications to set up a lab, bring, diversify this very specific subset of the industry, and really, again, create new opportunities for folks in the name of public safety, making sure products are safe. But unfortunately, again, because and we'll get to kind of where the bill officially gets derailed in a second, but that's one of the other really important pieces that was in there. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Well, we can move right on to that. I don't have any other questions. I just wanted to, since Doug was listing some of them, I wanted to give y'all some shout outs because I know they would resonate with the community, but also some people in the industry.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Cool. So we'll go into further. Again, we're going into the chronological order. So right now we're talking about we're into like Saturday, May 25th, which again is supposed to be the Saturday of Memorial Day. Everyone's supposed to be enjoying a holiday weekend. We're not enjoying the holiday weekend because we're working. We are on the phone, getting reports about what is going on. Again, verifying that it was GTI really acting alone in this in this kind of crusade to harm medical patients. And so we, really, many people might have seen on social media, we had a calls to action starting that day asking folks, don't let GTI win, call your lawmakers, specifically your senator's office, and ask them to include that medical patient expansion. That was already decided. That was not something, even though we went so hard on social media for 24 hours, that was decided well before we got any phone calls. And so that was incredibly disappointing to have to kind of accept on Sunday. It was like, well, shit, they're doing it. On that Sunday, which is now May 26th, the Illinois State Senate did approve that bill, as well as the bill that would have addressed the hemp issue. The key difference is, again, they passed the bill without that medical tax expansion. We can't give anybody a good explanation as to why they would let this happen, other than that GTI spooked Senate leadership. They sent so many people at Senate leadership saying, this isn't agreed upon, this is wrong, this is going to create a bigger issue, this is poorly written. And they bought it, unfortunately. Again, if we had anything to do with it, we would have made sure that didn't happen. But this is way above us. And so that bill advances through the Senate Executive Committee and through the Senate that Sunday. I believe it was a 51-5 vote. Everybody was very supportive of it. It got a lot of support on the floor in debate. Because again, a lot of the stuff that's in the bill is great. This is all really good policy, and people recognize that. And so that takes us into Monday, which is actually Memorial Day. That is when the lawmakers did actually take a break. The Senate, once they finished Sunday night, they were done. So they walked away from it Sunday night. They left home they left Springfield and went home. The Illinois House, and again, this is very complicated. So Cole, if this is coming off as unclear, please let me know and we'll back up. So the Illinois Senate, they did all this business first. They got done before Memorial Day. They went home. The Illinois House, they took Sunday off, took Monday off, and came back to Springfield first thing Tuesday. We came down to Springfield that Tuesday as well to make sure we were, in their faces and make sure they knew they had some work to do to get this bill passed. To be clear, at this point, the medical patient stuff was removed and that was not going to get added again. The Senate was done, so we couldn't change that. So what we had to do was pick up the pieces and move what we could. But unfortunately, because of just all of the kind of larger chaos, for lack of a better word, that relates, to the state budget. The state budget's a very complicated, $50 billion plus, behemoth of legislation, 3,000 plus pages. That's a lot to contend with. And, there's a lot of politics involved. Folks, we definitely encourage people to check out, Capitol Facts. There's a couple of really valuable reports that have been written, just kind of how the legislative session ended. Again, we're talking about the Illinois House. They spent all of that Tuesday after Memorial Day, basically, locked in the chamber working. They worked through the night, worked through midnight. They ended up adjourning. That would be that Wednesday, May 29th at about 5:30 in the morning. They spent that whole night just trying to get the budget passed. They had to take 3 votes in order to get all the votes. They had to vote 3 times in order for enough people to vote for the budget, which is unheard of in Illinois. Our lawmakers are used to ruling with an iron fist. If they say vote yes, they will get their yes votes. And so for that there to be so much difficulty passing the budget is like a huge deal. And that did not work in our favor, to be very clear. And so because of what had happened with the budget, there was so much chaos, so much just like back and forth politics. They just didn't call the bill.
Mm-hmm.
They just wouldn't call the bill.
Yep. And we not here we don't want to talk about hemp. We want to keep this conversation, to cannabis, but that also played a key role in this as well. We did a great job of separating the issues, having them in 2 different bills, because that's what derailed it last year. So we was like, we're going to separate these issues. We're going to focus cannabis over here and hemp over here. So if hemp don't go, cannabis goes. And because of the struggle of getting the budget passed, they didn't call either one. So now both were left in limbo. And it's really disheartening on the cannabis side, because, we were told that we'll work on it over the summer and then probably bring it back up in veto, but we know this is an election year and this kind of stuff tends to never happen. So now there's going to be another whole year without any of these people getting relief. And I forgot to mention also, it would have gave the dispensaries another 180 days to get going. And now that's taken off the table. Now come July, people might have to start giving their license back. So this is why, it was so critical that these things get across the finish line. It just hurts everybody. The transporters had some stuff in there that would have literally helped them with the long deliveries and having to take stuff back the very same day, which was causing a lot of overtime and drivers being fatigued from their long days. They would have had 72 hours. Was it 72 or 48, Peter?
48.
Yeah, 48 hours to get the stuff back. So it just really hurt a lot of different areas of this bill that would have provided relief and actually start giving the transporters some business. As you know, they really got to show the end of this whole stick. Like, most of their licenses are useless. Let's just call a spade a spade. They have no work, and only a handful of individuals are getting work from the multi-state operators. And in that meeting, they literally said that they never intended to give social equity people transport. So why did we even have this license then? Knowing this information. So it's a lot of layers to this.
Yeah, and you know, not trying to skip over anything, but just I thought maybe to put us back on track, I contacted GTI on that Sunday. I did get a hold of a representative who told me they were out of the office for the holiday weekend. They'd get back to me after the holiday weekend. They ultimately didn't get back to me. They published a statement I guess they provided a statement to the Chicago Tribune because that's where I saw their statement, and ultimately I shared it. Where do we go from here? Did you want to touch on this or?
I would like to quickly touch on this before we get into the next
Sure.
steps.
Yep.
I think the main thing for us, we want to be, our whole thing is transparency and accountability. And so, we take a lot of issue with the organization saying, "Oh, we champion patients, we care about social equity." When we have the receipts, we saw what y'all just did. One thing about the coalition, again, we thrive on transparency. One thing I seriously question is, where do the resources come from for GTI to do this? Because again, this is not free. This work is, unless you're me and Doug who do this work for free, nobody down there in Springfield is doing this work for free. These are tens of thousands of dollars per month that people are spending on lobbyists. And we look at programs like GTI's Good Green Grant, which the coalition is transparently we received a grant in 2021 that helped us start our expungement program. That was awesome. But that money, is completely dried up, and GTI is like, oh well, crying broke. But you have tens of thousands of dollars to spend over a holiday weekend on lobbyists to again harm medical patients and to protect your monopoly. And so, for them to put out a statement like, oh well, we care about this, it shows they have no shame, they have no self-awareness of what they've done. And whether that's as executives who made this decision or if there's a conscious choice made by the larger corporation, everybody needs to be held accountable. This is completely unacceptable. And yeah, we just take a lot of issue with them, framing this as, oh, well, we care, very paternalistically, like, oh, well, we cared, you just didn't write the bill well enough, or we just think you need to wait a little bit longer. Like, nah, you guys have had a stranglehold on this industry for far too long, and that time needs to come.
Yeah, and it's not like they wasn't included in the conversation. So if they thought there was a problem with it, they never stepped up and said, "Hey, here, we got a red flag. Let's talk about this." Not once did they do that, which is even more like tone deaf to what the language they just put out, saying that how they support medical patients when they stop them from getting telehealth and curbside and being able to shop at any dispensary to get their medicine. That don't sound like help to me.
Yeah.
Just to fill their pockets.
And if I could just, before Peter, you take us, I think you were saying maybe to our next steps. This isn't the first time that GTI specifically has reportedly opposed both this measure, which would have allowed medical patients to shop at any dispensary, or some of these other measures. This is an old report from Grown in 2020. And this was one of the first reports where GTI reportedly opposed opposition. And you can see it right here. This would have freed medical patients from registering with a specific dispensary. That actually may have been a slightly different rule, because back in the day, now that I'm reading that, back in the day, you had to register with a dispensary. Still, though, these were provisions that were seen as needed by social equity licensees. And according to this report, a team of lobbyists by Green Thumb Industry were hired to stop the bill's passage. Just wanted to bring it up that this isn't the first time they've reportedly opposed policies that would have possibly benefited social equity licensees.
Absolutely. That's it. Yeah, I forget. I failed to remember to mention that, but yes, and not only here in other states, they're doing the same thing. And to me, like this was supposed to be a social equity program, but obvious this is an MSO program. I don't know how we thought it was going to be equitable when they wrote most of the bill, and they wrote it in ways because they knew the complications and things was going to happen. They understood that 5,000 square feet, you wasn't going to get any investors to invest in a 5,000 square foot grow. They, simple math. Once you look at it, they understood it was going to take $8 to $10 million to set up those grows. Investors look for a quick return on their investments, not a slow, methodical return. So it was just little things that were put in the bill that hindsight, you look at it and was like, all this shit was intentional. I'm sorry for my language, but all of it was intentional. They knew the transporters weren't going to have anything to do because they weren't going to give it to them. It's just these intentional things that they did. But at the same time, our lawmakers continue to allow it to happen. We are continuing to be forced to sit down and negotiate with these people. And over 3 years, it's the same tactics. They agree, until the last day when they don't agree. Just the definition of insanity, what we're going through right now. They continue to force us, like, we got to bring everybody to the table, knowing that one party is going to do something in the end to harm all the great work. And once again, we in that same situation. It's just
Peter, I was going to say, if I saw you were about to say something, I was just going to say that a lot of these, specifically GTI, but others benefit from the status quo, and that's exactly what is continuing.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think what I would just want to emphasize is to what Doug just said. We keep doing the same thing over and over again. Our lawmakers wait till the last week of the session to do their business, and then, oh shit, these people have a problem, and then they send 10 people to your office, and now all of a sudden it's everybody's problem. And so, really we need to reject this as a way of governing as a whole. Like, we should not be passing a $50+ billion budget, a 3,300 page bill if nobody's read the damn thing. Like, we should have, time to, go through these things and make this work. But again, our lawmakers, that's not what they care about. They care about, continuing to hold on to their power, continuing to rule the sliver of Illinois they rule, and keeping this the way it is. And so, just a couple of things that we want to share with folks in terms of how we're going to move forward. So, we will obviously continue to work throughout the summertime to, engage our lawmakers, make sure they understand what went on last spring and how that could never happen ever again. So we'd encourage folks to join us. We'll make sure that there's a link in the show notes and stuff like that. But the bit.ly at, CIC policy, please sign up, join our meetings. We talk a lot about a lot of different things. But if you want to, have a hand in passing this stuff, that would be the best place for you to join us. The lawmakers did earlier today confirm the legislative veto session, which is the next time our lawmakers will all be back in Springfield, is confirmed for November. So it's going to be the 2 weeks sandwiched between the election and the first week of November. Those 2 weeks that come after that, before the week of Thanksgiving. So it's going to be a very busy period between, the election finishing up, going to Springfield, and then Thanksgiving. But we will make sure that, we do everything we possibly can to get all of this stuff advanced when we're back in Springfield in November. We talked a lot about what's in the bill. There's a lot of good stuff in there. One thing that we didn't talk about at all, which I'm kind of glad we didn't, because I want to put a pin into it now, which is included in the bill, was a set of rules around antitrust. And it basically would say the state of Illinois, if they find that a business is operating in a monopolistic, trying to set up a monopoly, trying to act in an anti-competitive way, we would be able to hold them accountable. We can create rules to actually hold them accountable. So whether that's fining them, whether it's taking their licenses away, we want to have a very honest conversation with the, when this bill passes, about what does that look like? Because in our opinion, the state of Illinois should do everything possible to make sure GTI is held accountable. Because ultimately what they did, other than screwing medical patients, other than screwing social equity businesses, they acted, they're acting as a monopoly. They're acting to protect their sliver of the industry, which is far outside anybody, any of the other, any social equity businesses, that's for certain. And it's completely unacceptable. And again, it's illegal in most other industries. We're a little bit late to make these, adopt these in cannabis. And it's about time that we adopt them and hold them accountable.
Absolutely.
Got it. Well, so yeah, next veto session is this fall. Between then and now, what can we do? I know one of the things we can do is obviously make great memes and keep people in the loop on what happened and why it's so bad. I'm displaying some memes right now. What are some other things we can do to help? Again, folks that are listening, I'll have the link in the podcast description so you can join the meetings. I'm always there. There are a lot of other people there. So again, if you want to get involved, that's the best way. Yeah, what are our next steps before we close?
So we really, let me take a step back. Like what Peter was saying, join us on our policy meetings right now. We're doing a lot of planning on action we want to take over this summer. We're not going to let GTI forget about what they have done. They're hoping things simmer down. But no, we're going to be very, very active. Actions against them in some of their big programming that's coming up. Full out boycotts. We're going to continue to post the boycotts, and then we're going to do some direct action. But we're in the planning stages of that. And if you really feel strongly about that, join us in our meetings, help us plan it. We want to make this a very successful summer and let this be noticed to the other organizations that this is not acceptable, and the same thing is going to happen to you if you do this, if you pull a stunt like this. So we are very excited about some of the things we're putting together to do this work this summer. So if you guys want to help, join us. The fight is real. And we gonna fight until every license is given out for equity, justice, and inclusion in the space. You want to talk about some other stuff, Peter, or what we doing?
I think we cover most of it. Again, join us on our Monday policy meetings. Follow us on social media, especially Instagram at Canada Equity IL. We're going to keep posting graphics about how you can plug in on the policy stuff, on the boycott. Again, definitely encourage folks, post those graphics on the boycott. Make sure you're, tagging GTI, hashtag boycott GTI. Doug mentioned it, but specifically GTI is hosting their Miracle in Mundelein concert in September. They're trying to do a whole, press blitz about that. Comment on those posts, boycott GTI. Comment, tag the artists who are scheduled to perform there. Wiz Khalifa, Slightly Stoopid. There's a lot of, big name acts that could really make a difference if they, stood in solidarity with us, and stood against these companies who are, again, are just displaying endless greed, endless, ultimately this is racist and this is ableist, what they're doing. And so we need to make sure that collectively as a community, we all have a role to play. We all got to step up and make sure we're counted. So the last thing I'll say is if you have questions about the boycott, you're like, hey, how do I actually make this right for me? Because again, it looks different for everybody. Please reach out to us. Again, shoot us a DM on social media, send us an email, whatever's best for you, we will get in touch with you. Because, it only works if we're all on the same page, we're all beating the same drum, shouting the same message. And so again, we want everybody, all your support. Reach out to us if you have questions.
Doug, anything?
Absolutely. The last thing I want to say is we can't let our lawmakers off the hook neither. Like, they're complicit with this whole thing, and they continue to allow these things to happen. It wasn't like we didn't have enough votes to pass it. It just didn't get called. We got to be better than that. We got to do better. This hurt a lot of people, and it's going to continue to hurt for another whole year if we don't force them to do what they need to do. it's time we stop asking. Like asking is not getting us nothing. It's time we start demanding and really stepping up the pressure. Like make it make sense.
Well said. Well said. Well, I just want to thank Doug, Peter, and everybody at CEIC for everything you do for the community. Of course, we talked a lot about cannabis stuff in which you play a huge role in, but you also do a lot of different things that are related to cannabis, like expungements, but so many other things. So, folks, I just want to put a plug in once again, cannabisequityil.org. The links will be in the show notes. Get involved, join the fight. And let's make this happen. Like Doug said, it's time to stop asking. It's time to start doing, and that's what we're gonna do going forward. So let's go, guys. Right?
Let's go.
Hell yeah.
Thank you, Cole.
Yep.
Very appreciate you.
Thanks, Cole.
Yep. And folks, on that note, we'll see you on the next episode of the Cole Memo. Take care.